Hey, it's Mazzy. Welcome back. Epicus, Epicos, Epic. Here are 25 epic songs that I want to showcase and share to you from my personal taste. The top 25 epic songs. Now, epicus is the Latin word from epikos, the Greek word meaning a long story, historic, important. And that's how I identify these songs. Now, some of them will be very obvious to you. When I was compiling this list, there were several obvious choices that I decided, for whatever reason, where I am right now in this moment, I couldn't include. I didn't include Stairway to Heaven. It's the cliche and the perfect description of an epic song. I also did not include Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. I don't know, it's just right where I am right now. I've heard that too much, but that would be definitely a top 25 probably for most of you. Now, you have to separate this a little bit and you have to break it out. Epic means different things to different people. Some of these songs were huge hits. Not all of them were. Some of them were important. Now, in the true sense, epic would be a long story, as I said, storytelling, important, almost self-important a little bit, and one could say pretentious. I left off long, one-sided, and 12, 15-minute prog type things like in Court of the Crimson King, because I think that's in a different category. And remember, too, a lot of these, I think for the most part, with some exceptions, there are definitely exceptions. There's always exceptions, right, in these videos and in these, compilations and these rankings. And I am going to rank them from my point of view. These are great records. The songs are good, but not all the songs are amazing, classically written songs in pretty much, I'm only showing rock and roll here with one exception. These are rock records for the most part. So starting at number 25, this is a personal favorite of mine and probably one that wouldn't be considered on a list by most people on this particular list as epic, but I think it's very epic. And that is, It's Not the End of the World by Super Furry Animals. Super Furry Animals is a Welsh band. A pretty wonderful record. It's very lush, it's very psychedelic, very electronic, but It's Not the End of the World is kind of appropriate song right now. And what a great, great album. That comes in at number 25. This is from 1984. I love this Liverpool band. And Killing Moon, there's been several different mixes and remixes. And during the 80s, a lot of these 12-inch remixes would come out. So I have several versions of that song, and some are very long and remixed to various configurations. And Killing Moon is a fantastic record, and to me fits right into this epic thing of it. Musically, lyrically, thematically. What a great epic of a song, Echo and the Bunnymen. Coming at number 23, this is a song that blew me away, and this is an epic piece of music from my point of view. And this is the record that really got me into Radiohead and immersed me in the band. And that is the opening track, Everything in Its Right Place, on Kid A. I first heard this song on compact disc, had it in my office. I just picked up the CD, and I played that song about 10 times before I even continued with the rest of the album. The sound, the production, obviously some people really like their more guitar-based music, but the electronics, the vocal effects, if you will, on this production just blew me away. This is an epic opening to an album, one of the greatest openings to any album in my collection. It's definitely in the top 25 opening tracks, but I think it's an epic song. Everything in Its Right Place from Radiohead. This was 2001, I believe. So this next song is a 1968 song that blew me away when I heard it, and that is Sky Pilot by Eric Burton and the Animals. This is truly an epic piece of music, a recording. I remember getting the single when it first came out prior to getting the album, and it was A and B sides. It carried over when the bagpipes in the center explode and you hear the war-torn, sound effects from the war it fades out and fades in on the B side of the single. Obviously, the album, The Twain Shall Meet, Eric Burton, The Animals, brings the entire song in one great, elongated, epic storytelling, anti-war presentation. And Sky Pilot is one of the most amazing records in my collection. And every time I hear it, the recording is somewhat compressed and it's not the greatest of recording, but the way it has the orchestra and the build up at the end of the song and within the song. And what's great about this concept for me is a lot of these songs, in particular this one and several that I'll be showcasing later, are very operatic. They're very symphonic. I don't necessarily mean symphonic in terms of classical music or orchestration, although they are just that in many cases. But they're these massive endeavors and have different sections stitched together to make these amazing, literally epic pieces of music. So Sky Pilot, Eric Burton, and the Animals. Now, another one, which is very much like that, which has a lot of stuff going on in it, and that is Something in the Air by Thunderclap Newman. This was produced by Pete Townsend of The Who. This was on Track Records, the label that Kit Lambert and Townsend and The Who and their production and management team had, and signed Jimi Hendrix, and obviously The Who records came out. But this record has Speedy King on here, the protagonist, vocalist in a way, has that amazing album song that ends the album. Used beautifully at the end of the film, The Magic Christian, and used on a lot of films. Tom Petty covered it on the Fillmore series of shows way back when. But it's an amazing piece with honky-tonk piano cut in the middle. It has an epic build-up, orchestrated build-up later on in the third stanza or the third section in a way. Again, these are like symphonies, mini symphonies of music. Epic, a great epic record. And that is number 19. Coming in at number 20, one that you'll all know. It's only 5.5 minutes, I believe, a little under that. And that is Space Odyssey by David Bowie. You all know that song. You don't know about Major Tom. What a beautiful build-up. What a beautiful song that starts softly and builds up to a wonderful crescendo as well. An epic piece of music. Obviously, later he had a sequel of sorts. We know Major Tom's a junkie. Space Oddity, self-titled album, American version on RCA Records. A spectacular song by David Bowie, Space Oddity. Now, another song that is just a great tour, and what I really like about Ray Davies of the Kinks is how he would write about simple life, about things that we all can associate with. And I think you could pick so many songs, great. These aren't necessarily the best songs by any of these artists. In fact, very few are, and that's not what this is about. But one of the most amazing songs, storytelling songs, and I think it fits this just beautifully. It just tells a story and goes on for 6 minutes and 20 seconds by the Kinks, not Celluloid Heroes. And that's on this 1972 RCA Victor Records. This was half live, half in the studio, and Celluloid Hero ends the proper studio record. That, again, also another song that starts and fades in, and it takes a good 45 plus seconds to a minute to really kind of fade in with the acoustic guitar and the piano. And Ray Davies, you could just see everything on Hollywood Boulevard. Having, many times walked down Hollywood Boulevard and seen the stars in the sidewalk, and you see all these names, you're stepping on these names. He tells a story of all these great old silver screen stars, and it's just a beautiful piece of music. But again, this type of song wouldn't be a song that has probably been covered very much. So a lot of these songs, like I can't see the Thunderclap Newman song being covered. Obviously, Tom Petty did it, and he did it wonderfully. It doesn't really add anything to the original version because it's about the record and the construction of the record. And I say this is very similar in that respect. A song that I'm sure it has been covered before, but I don't really see how it could be bettered. And that's the thing. Has anyone bettered these songs? I mean, maybe someone has. One in particular song that I'll get to later is a cover, and it is become the definitive version of that song. Next at number 17, the epic song that ends this record, Desperado, Under the Eaves by Warren Zevon, a self-titled Asylum record. The orchestration on that, he is classically trained, and his compositions, his classical arrangements are very much like the composer Aaron Copland, who did Rodeo and Billy the Kid. It's very that cinematic, beautiful landscape of music that he does on here. And that song that ends this album is just an epic look of the dark underbelly of Los Angeles in the 1970s. I was sitting in the Hollywood Hawaiian Hotel. I was staring in my empty coffee cup. I was thinking that the gypsy wasn't blind. All the salty margaritas in Los Angeles, I'm going to drink them up. And if California slides into the ocean like the mystics and statistics say it will, I believe this hotel will be standing until I paid my bill. The harmonies on here, when it explodes in the middle of the song at the end, the harmonies of the Gentleman Boys, which are Carl Wilson of the Beach Boys, Jackson Browne, High Winding, and Warren Zevon, it's like a Beach Boys song. It's the Beach Boys hanging out with Warren Zevon, and it's a beautiful recording, symphonic masterpiece, a dark song in a way, a beautiful song, a song about making it in LA and not making it in LA. Desperados, Under the Eaves, Warren Zevon. Coming at number 17 is The Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon & Garfunkel. Now, this is probably, I would say, the one song that has been covered beautifully by other artists. Obviously, people like Aretha Franklin. It's a very soul gospel-y song, and it's so wonderful that Paul Simon wrote this beautiful song and pretty much let Art Garfunkel sing the entire song. Just the build-up, the quietness. It's schmaltzy as hell, but it's probably the most beautiful piece of music they've ever recorded. And it builds and builds and builds. The production on this by Paul Simon, Art Garfunkel, and Roy Halley make this a wonderful record. Now, it's not my favorite Simon Garfunkel record, but that is their most epic songs and just perfect for this list. Coming to number 16, I'm going in a little different direction. It's a song that tells a story. It's one of the great ballads in country music. I would say more specifically cowboy music, and that is El Paso. And that is El Paso, obviously, by Marty Robbins. Gunfire ballads and trail songs. I first heard this song by the Grateful Dead. Grateful Dead, around 1969, 1970, was covering Big Iron by Marty Robbins and El Paso. That's where I first heard it. Grateful Dead don't touch this version. The acoustic guitars on here, the production, this seems to go on forever. And a lot of these songs, I find that most of these songs I could play over and over and over again. And these songs could be double, triple, quadruple the time, and I would still enjoy them. That's what's amazing about these epics. This tells a story. Every time I hear this, I can't turn it off. If it comes on in my car, if I'm somewhere, I'll stop and listen to it. Because it's one of the most beautiful, tragic in a way, sad songs. But that's what a great, country song is about. That's what a great cowboy song is about. El Paso is one of those songs that you just can't turn off. You want it to play forever. At least I want it to play forever. This is one of those songs, one of those records people either love or they got burnt out by it. This is an 8.5-minute masterpiece of a ballad in 1971. Actually, it really came out the end of that year. And in 1972, you couldn't get away from this song. But I remember listening to this song over and over again, trying to figure out the lyrics and follow the lyrics and hear all that. They weren't hints, they were overt mentions of the history of rock and roll from the day the music died with Buddy Holly and Big Bopper and Richie Valens in that tragic plane crash. This tells the whole story of pop music throughout the 1960s in a way. Don McLean Could almost never live this down. There was another hit, the follow-up, Vincent, about Vincent Van Gogh. Totally different direction of the painter. But this is a wonderful song. This is a major epic. This tells this elongated story. And if you were into pop music, and me being, you know, a 17-and-a-half-year-old when this record came out, I just ate this song up. It's beautifully recorded. And what's great about it is the acoustic guitar and the rhythm section, and that piano really adds to it. The Beatle connection here, I think Dave Spinoza plays guitar on it, who played with Lennon and McCartney on early solo records of theirs. But American Pie is a fantastic song. Overplayed for many years. I couldn't listen to it for many years. It's the kind of thing you can't just have a truncated version of this. And ironically, it was covered and became a hit with a single that Madonna and the actor Rupert Everett recorded for a soundtrack for a motion picture. And I believe it hit #1 in parts of Europe. And that's a definitely cut down a version of American Pie by Don McLean. So great song. Coming at number 14 is Oh Well by Fleetwood Mac. The 1970 Fleetwood Mac album that happens to be my favorite Fleetwood Mac album. It's called Then Play On. The song is Oh Well. It wasn't originally on the original UK version. It was added on the American version. It was a single, again, crossing A side, B side, because it was so long. It's close to 8 minutes, as I recall. And it starts with this powerhouse lead bit by Peter Green. Of course, you got Danny Kerwin and Jeremy Spencer in the band. So you have 3 amazing guitar players on this record. But Oh Well goes for this really acoustic, kind of just quick thing. There's a blues section in it. There is a classical Spanish guitar section towards the last third, and kind of ends beautifully. Oh Well is an epic, and it's probably the biggest epic in Fleetwood Mac's career. You know, Albatross has a sort of a surreal, beautiful, ethereal, Hawaiian-like slide playing, a song that actually influenced John Lennon in his song Because on Abbey Road. But Oh Well is a really beautiful section piece of music, and you could take the various sections and enjoy that individually, but as a whole, obviously, it works even better. Fleetwood Mac. Okay, number 13, Running Up That Hill. Now, obviously, in the last year, because of the TV show Stranger Things, this got a rebirth, and it was brought to a whole new audience. But Hounds of Love, considered probably her best, or one of her best 2 albums back-to-back with The Dreaming. The opening track on this, the way this starts out, just the rhythm of this, Running Up the Hill, A Deal with God. She wanted to call it A Deal with God. The label really didn't want her to do that. And of course, that was a compromise. Was it a good compromise? Should be the artist's decision, but who knows? But what a great song. I've been a Kate Bush fan since my first trip arrival in March of '78 to the United Kingdom, first hearing Wuthering Heights. But this entire album is a beautiful, this is an epic album from beginning to end, but Running Up That Hill really kind of sets a tone to it. The rhythm of it, just a really great record. But I almost could have picked Cloud Busting. In fact, there's a great Organian mix that she did on a 12-inch and a CD box set that is masterful. But again, Running Up That Hill, Kate Bush. Next at number 12 is I'm Not in Love by 10cc. This album came out the same year as Bohemian Rhapsody. And in a way, both those songs were recorded separately, unbeknownst to each other, of these great major multi-track overdubs of vocals. Bohemian Rhapsody, obviously a beautiful song with more sections off to 10cc's version. This is probably the better song. Forget the record. Bohemian Rhapsody is a masterpiece in terms of its expanse. Basic great love song that Eric Stewart wrote. And the way they multi-track, the way they do these, just how it builds in a very slow manner. 10cc's I'm Not in Love, one of the most beautiful songs of the 1970s on original soundtrack. Now, I could have picked this epic, One Night in Paris, all the parts, which has almost, again, operatic, symphonic, the various sections of the music. But as a song, I think that's more of a, almost like a mini cinematic film. There's literally a song called The Film of My Love that ends this. This is a very cinematic album. But again, I'm Not in Love is an epic piece of music, and it's an epic record, 10cc. Number 11 is 1975's Led Zeppelin, Cashmere, from Physical Graffiti. This is one of the most amazing pieces of music. It stands out so much on this album because it is so different than anything else on this album. This is epic in the true sense. It's got that Moroccan feel, that the rhythm. The drums make this without going overboard. John Bonham's playing is amazing. The orchestration on this and the Indian tunings and things on this, and the progression of this and how it breaks instrumentally. And I believe John Paul Jones did the orchestration on this. Number 10 is The Who's Won't Get Fooled Again. Of course, Pete Townsend from his Lifehouse project started programming a lot of these synthesizer and electronic loops and things that were the basic for this album. I almost could have picked Bob O'Reilly. The way this record opens was like nothing else in 1971. But Won't Get Fooled Again, 8.5 minutes, is the epic on this record. It's a masterful piece of music. You got this intense vocalizing by Roger Daltrey on here that just explodes several times during the record. Obviously, the great loops and electronic loops, the bass playing of the Ox, John Entwistle, and of course, Keith Moon's amazing drumming on this album. This album is considered their best album from a lot of people who like this period of The Who. It's an amazing album, I don't doubt that. I particularly am more partial to The Who Sell Out. But this is an epic album from beginning to end. It also has some beautiful quiet patches as well. Won't Get Fooled Again, an amazing piece of music. The only problem with these songs is that Pete Townsend sold them over and over again, and using them the themes of CSI on CBS television on all the beginning of those shows, in a way, has wrecked some of the songs on this record for me. But still, Won't Get Fooled Again. I had to include it at number 10 on the greatest 25 epics from my point of view. Number 9 is Jungle Land by Bruce Springsteen. Now, he has a lot of epics, especially in his early days. Rosalita, Sandy from the second album. But all in all, I mean, Born to Run, Thunder Road. But in terms of epic, from my original concept of this video to really do the pieces that are like operas, the pieces of music, the records that are like symphonies, you gotta throw in there Jungle Land. It ends the record. It's got this amazing orchestrated intro and piano intro by Roy Bittan with this theme that Bruce has used several times on songs. And the way this builds up with the string arrangement, with that amazing break of the saxophone solo from Clarence Clemens, and just the vocals. I mean, the vocals explode on this record. It's like Bruce Springsteen has never sounded like this. Of course he has. This is the first time I saw Bruce Springsteen. When this came out, I saw him 3 times this year. October, November 1975, various shows, starting with the Paramount Theater in Oakland. This is my favorite Springsteen album, but Jungle Land is something I don't think he ever came close to epic-wise. He obviously wrote great songs. Again, another song I can't see who would cover that song. I'm sure someone's going to point out that Jungle Land was covered by somebody, but who the hell is going to tackle this amazing thing unless you really turn it inside out and do it something different, maybe lo-fi, maybe. But Jungle Land is an amazing, epic piece of music. Number 8 is Layla, Eric and the Dominoes. This is a great record, and Layla is a true sense of an epic record. All the various sections of the record, that opening riff of Duane Allman's, I mean, how great is that, right? The piano bit. Now, controversy with the piano bit, you probably know by now. If not, it's credited to Jim Gordon, the drummer, who was playing it, but is really written by Rita Coolidge. And There's so many sections of this song that are beautiful. And I think the piano coda adds to the majesty of Layla. What a great song. And what a great love song. This is literally called Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs. A love song to Patty, Boyd, Harrison, Clapton. Can you imagine having these great songs written about you? Something written about you by George Harrison, Layla by Eric Clapton. But what a fantastic record. And Layla is an epic classic song if there ever was one. Coming in number 7 is Jimi Hendrix's version of All Along the Watchtower. Now, not a particularly long song. Epic, yes, because it explodes. When you first hear it, the way this song starts is amazing. Now, a year and a half prior to this, Dylan put out the song that he wrote on John Wesley Harding. I had that song. And when I first heard this, I didn't recognize it as the song on that album. As much as I listened to John Wesley Harding, I didn't really know that song. It wasn't a song that was embedded in me. But when this came out, it was like nothing else. It's amazing. This is my favorite Jimi Hendrix record anyway. But that song, the guitars on it, what an epic. This is truly an epic piece of music. Number 6, The Byrds. Number 6, The Byrds, Chestnut Mayor from Untitled, 1970. This is a song co-written by Roger McGuinn and Jacques Levy. This was a song from a project they were writing for somewhat of a theatrical piece, a Broadway-like musical. And every time I hear this, I'm in awe. I listen closely. This is a great headphone piece. I turn this up. What makes it is not just the storytelling and the various sections, but I love the acoustic guitar playing of Clarence White. When you listen to that coming through one of the speakers, and it's a great stereo separation, but you hear that playing, you realize just how great Clarence White as a guitar player, his acoustic playing, his country picking, his rock playing, the B-bender on the Telecaster guitar that he played. It's such a beautiful song. It has that spacey atmospheric level when the horse is falling down into the valley, into the puddle of water, and you're trying to harness this great chestnut mare. It is a beautiful ballad. It's a beautiful visionary piece. It's a dream sequence in a way. I think it's also very sexual. If you listen to that song and think in those terms, follow the story, follow what's happening there. Chestnut Mayor is beautifully produced and beautifully recorded, and the entire band really gels here. And I kind of wish that this version of the Byrds had stayed together beyond 1972 or so, because I think they were onto something with their live record in this that's almost like a jam band in a way, but the stuff they were doing was really far ahead of its time, and that kind of country rock thing was still a little nebulous in terms of an audience. But what a beautiful, beautiful record in Chestnut Mayor, an epic piece of record making. Number 5 is an obvious choice, and I'm showing the 50th anniversary single of it that came out on Record Store Day, and that's Procol Harum's A Wider Shade of Pale. This apparently is the most played song in the United Kingdom, including radio, jukeboxes, and it is a magnificent piece. Obviously, Matthew Fisher and Gary Brooker, Robin Trower. Great lyrics by Keith Reid, who died in the past year, who was the lyricist. One of the few bands, there are a few, that have a lyricist that's part of the band, but not one of the musicians in the band. But that song is this ethereal, skip-a-line fandango, doing cartwheels on the floor. The organ, Matthew Fisher's organ, that's reminiscent of Bach. It's a beautiful song. You all know it. I don't really have to talk more about it. It is an epic. It is a great song, a song that has been covered many times, but this is the definitive version. I have versions in several different languages of Procol Harum. A Wider Shade of Pale. We also lost, obviously, Gary Brooker in the last year or two, but a great band and one of the greatest records ever recorded, ever made, Procol Harum, and that's at number 5. Number 4 is Sympathy for the Devil. How can you not include Sympathy for the Devil? Again, one of the greatest openings of any record, 1968's Beggar's Banquet. The percussion, how that opens up, just the raw intensity of the lyrics and the vocalizing of Mick Jagger, and what a political statement. When people say, Mazzy, I came here for the music, I don't want to hear politics, I say, fuck, this is the stuff that makes rock and roll worthwhile. This is the perfect record, maybe the best record next to Revolution by the Beatles for 1968. What a tempestuous year that was. I shouted out Who Killed the Kennedys. After all, it was you and me. A great epic, a great, great record, a great sounding record. Produced by Glenn Johns, as I recall. Rolling Stones, Sympathy for the Devil, 1968. Number 3 is A Day in the Life. Now, Strawberry Fields, a lot of people cite as his best amazing artsy project, and it is an amazing song. It's again, another great record that the song itself isn't as good or as important or maybe a little more slight as the final record itself. And those of you who have heard the bootleg versions or some of the records on the anniversary edition versions of Strawberry Fields have heard the entire progression from a folk song that John, acoustic song John was recording while he was in Spain, filming How I Won the War, to all the various build-up, editing, mixes together of this song. But A Day in the Life is the Beatles' epic. A Day in the Life is the genius ending to this great album from 1967. A Day in the Life is a combination of two maybe slider songs by Lennon and McCartney. The beginning part, I read the news today, oh boy, of John Lennon, woke up, got out of bed, little ditty of McCartney, putting it together, adding the George Martin arranged build up, him translating this idea that Lennon and McCartney has, immense, intense explosion to separate the middle part and to end the record, and with that great multi-piano crescendo that lasts about 40 seconds. And we've heard now with the anniversary how they tried other possibilities and how they picked the right one. The haunting vocals of John Lennon at the beginning of that song, even the slight middle part of Paul McCartney, but that great, great build-up. For years, we only heard the crossfade of Day in the Life coming from the reprise of Sgt. Pepper, from the Blue album, the 73 comp, but on the Imagine soundtrack, I think that's the first place. The Imagine John Lennon film soundtrack is the first time I ever recall hearing A Day in the Life without the crossfade, just a clean acoustic guitar intro, and it's so beautiful. It's an amazing piece of music, and it's definitely an epic, and it's a symphonic masterpiece by the Beatles. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, 1967. Number 2 is one of the greatest singles from the 1960s, and that's Good Vibrations. Of course, it was just a lonely single in 1966 that became a massive hit, and it was something that Brian Wilson had in his head, and it was not like any other Beach Boys song. What an amazing single. I bought that single. It was the first single. I never bought the surfer songs early on. I was into the Beatles. Surfer music was something Southern California foreign to me, being from Northern California. But Good Vibrations changed things. The theremin in it, the arrangements in it. What an amazing piece of music. All the different sections of that song and great harmonies and lyrics. And of course, they put out Pet Sounds. Should have been on Pet Sounds. That came out before that. Should have been on Pet Sounds. But it finally comes on here after Pepper. And it kind of gets lost in this album. This album was a disappointment to some. The single Heroes and Villains was a disappointment. But this is a cool record, and it's grown in stature over the years. But opening side 2 with Good Vibrations, Too Little Too Late maybe, I don't know, but I love this cover. I love Smiley Smile. Whole story you can get into and do a video just on this album. But Good Vibrations is an epic masterpiece, an amazing accomplishment, and a vision that Brian Epstein had in his head and was almost shot down from the people around him, from his father to the rest of the band. But he knew, and he fucking nailed it on that song. And number one, to me, one of the great epics, and it's not a lot of parts, but it's a song that goes on, that goes on, that goes on, with some of the best lyrics on a pop rock and roll song ever. And number one, the greatest epic song in my collection is Bob Dylan's Like a Rolling Stone. This is a perfect single. This, to me, is the best single of the 1960s. Yeah, I like Strawberry Fields, I like the Beatles, I like Lady Madonna, I like Hey Jude. I like, it's not, music should not be a competition, so I'm really going against my own philosophy here. But this is fun. This is for entertainment purposes only. What a great song. What a great recording. I have the huge 1965-66 cutting-edge Bob Dylan CD set that has literally, 20 versions of Like a Rolling Stone, and you hear him and the band and Bob Johnson, the producer, going through, working this out in the studio. He nails it on this version. Now, there's other versions that are cool ass. They're interesting versions, but this is the version. The lyrics, the storytelling, the way this opens up with that snare drum hit, goes into that with that great organ bit by Al Cooper, that circular cyclone organ bit, and that great guitar playing by Mike Bloomfield on that. I don't think Dylan's ever sounded better than with Mike Bloomfield as a guitar player. Yeah, I like Robbie Robertson, but he wasn't Mike Bloomfield. The soulful, bluesy side of the tortured soul in Mike Bloomfield and Al Cooper add to this record. This is a perfect single. This is an epic single. Bob Dylan's Like a Rolling Stone. So Mazzy, thanks you for watching. List your epic songs. A lot I missed. There's a lot I could have gone through, and I had to really cull it down to these 25, and from my personal taste, what I like to listen to. I need to do a playlist of this in the car. I think it'd be a fun list. Maybe you should do that and listen to it and let me know how it goes. Let me know what you think. Mazzy loves you. Thanks for watching.